Hey everyone, this is Junior. I'm your host for Blind But Not Broken podcast. And let's see here. Today we're going to do things a little different. And I want to introduce my co-host. Hi.
Oh, hey there, beautiful people. I'm Ara, and I'm here to keep Junior on his toes, and maybe you too. Let's get into the fun, shall we?
So here's the deal. I heard a song that reminded me a lot of me, and it was somebody AI generated the song, and it's one I'm going to actually play for you guys before we end today. But it got me thinking about my childhood and the things that I do today that what guided me to this point and why I do this podcast, for instance, is because of the fact that if I touch just one person, if I help just one person, maybe they realize they're not alone, then it's all worth it because this is way out of my comfort zone. As I said before, I don't play well with others. I just don't. I have very few people in my life, and it's why I was such a good truck driver, over the road truck drivers, because of the fact that I didn't need community or people around, friends, all that good stuff. I had people I could count on my one hand that I could count on, which is makes me blessed for sure, because most people think they have a lot of friends and don't. That's how my Facebook page has, I don't know, 4,000 and some friends from all over the world, but I don't know any of them. And the reason 90% of them are on there, 9/10% of them are on there, is because I lost 200 pounds on Herbalife. And so everybody wanted to use my story and stuff like that. I don't care. You can use my story all day long. I don't give a shit about that. But the point is that I don't have a lot of people around me. And that is a point that I like to stay with. Well, somebody asked a question. Actually, I got pounded with questions about my childhood, and I will, during the course of the whole podcast, not just this episode, but the whole podcast, I will explain more of what happened and how I became me and how I overcame things and that kind of thing, because that's what this is all about. It's all about believe certain things to be true. If you're waiting for your ship to come in, get off your dead ass and swim out to it. I believe that. Yes, it's very blunt, but it's true. I also believe that if you want something bad enough, you figure out a way to get it, just like when you were a kid. If you don't, you figure out an excuse, because if you figure out the excuse, then you don't have to take responsibility for it. It's somebody else's fault or it's something else's fault or whatever. It's not your fault, but it is. If you want to know who's the one that's in charge of your life, look in the mirror. You have multiple people who started with nothing and became multimillionaires. And I've actually talked about Enrique Carrillo, who's a friend of mine. And in Herbalife, this kid, he was on the wrong path. He was going down the wrong path. He was getting arrested and just a lot of nasty things going on. And now he has changed his life so much due to Herbalife and Mark Hughes, who's the founder of Herbalife, and Jim Rohn, who is Tony Robbins' mentor, who was also a Herbalife distributor and was friends with Mark Hughes. Well, Enrique's taken all this stuff that he's learned and he's gone crazy with it. And now the guy lives in the highest penthouse in Houston, Texas. There's glass all the way around it. He does videos from all the different places he goes because he travels around the world. The man makes millions. And it's like, that was totally him. He came from zero. His parents even were like, oh, go get a job. Don't do this. And he was so sure that he knew what he was doing and he had so much passion about it that he actually made it. And he actually kicked butt. And that's what I'm talking about. He wanted it bad enough. I was in Herbalife and, well, I still am. I still drink their shakes. But the point is that I don't do the business because I'm not good for the business because I'm not a people person. You got to be a people person. And hence why on my Facebook page, I have all these so-called friends. They don't know me from Adam, but they're able to use my story to maybe help others do what I did. I was going to lose my legs. Herbalife was, I found out about Herbalife from a trucking friend of mine, and he'd been hammering me for years about it. And I didn't want to deal with it. And I was like, every time I talked to him, it was like Herbalife. I hated it. And then I got told by a doctor I had about 6 months till they were going to take my legs because they were so bad and the circulation was so nasty on them. And he said they were going to take my legs. And I thought, Jesus, that was a wake up call. So I went, okay. At the time, I weighed 520 pounds. And I thought to myself, I can call this friend because he keeps talking about this life thing. And I can call him and I can get on the products and see what they do. If they work, it's a win for me. If they don't work, it's a win for me because I can tell him to shut the hell up. Well, they worked. I keep my legs. I still got my legs to this day. And this was probably, I don't know, 20 years ago, close to it, 10, 12, 15, something. I don't know. I can't even remember. Anyway, it is, I learned really fast. We even started a club up here in Tucson, Nutrition Club, Herbalife Club, and it did pretty well. And then we ended up going to our downline, and they did pretty well on it until a vet that was next door decided to pay more for the space, and so it ended. But point was, a lot of people were doing it, and it was like at least we touched some lives, and it saved my legs. Diabetes later took my sight, as you all know. And people go, well, how do you just keep going? It's because of the fact that while I was with Herbalife, I got introduced to Jim Rohn. And I started listening to him. What he said made so much sense. And he said things by telling stories, hence why I tell stories. And he said, if you want to help people, you got to tell stories. You got to tell the story of what it is that you had going on and then where you ended up. That's the whole point, is the journey, how you did that. And so in clubs all around the world, and nutrition clubs all around the world, they still have my legs before when I was 520 pounds and after when I had lost 200 pounds. And I took pictures of my legs again, and they've got that. Some of them have the full body thing of me because I had this pair of jeans that I would wear. I was huge. And I wore this pair of jeans, and they barely fit me. I was like, they were tight. I was going to have to get more size. I think they were 60 or 74, the sizes on them, 60 or 74. Anyway, I think it was 60, 67 maybe. Anyway, so 68, that's what it was. 68, 72, 72. There it is. 72 was what where these pants were. That's the size they were. And later on, I took a picture, me standing in one leg. Literally, both legs were in one pant leg of these jeans. And I held out all this material that was the other side of the jeans. It was an amazing picture, and it told a huge story by just one picture. And I learned then the power of showing people. You can lead them to water. It doesn't mean they're going to drink it, but you can lead them to it. You can lead them to something that will help them, etc. And the way I do things now is I try to help people when I can. I haven't done, let's put it this way, I haven't for most of my life done the one-on-one with people. I just haven't done it. It's just, I was better alone. And that's what I thought. And so this song made me think about all this stuff and all through my life and what I did and how I did it and why I did it and how far I'd come from when I was a child and getting abused constantly, even the priest abusing thing. I went through that back when nobody wanted to talk about that crap. And it was like, and then you had all these people come forward and go, oh, I was abused. I should get money. And I never got into that because I thought, you know what? I'm not being abused anymore. So therefore, what does it matter? I need to get over it. And that's what I did. Simple deal. Mind over matter. It's like Jim Rohn told a story. He told a story about two ranchers talking, communicating. I've told the story before, but it's relevant. Two ranchers are talking, and they're talking at the one rancher's house, and they get outside, and they're outside in the yard, and there's a dog laying on the porch, and the dog keeps moaning. And the other rancher keeps looking over and going, what the hell, every time the dog moans. And so then he takes a closer look, and he realizes the dog's laying on a nail. It's coming up out of the boards of the porch. And when it was his turn to talk, he said, hey, you realize the dog's laying on a nail. Aren't you going to move him? And the other rancher goes, no, when it hurts bad enough, he'll move himself. That story changed my life because it's true. When it hurts bad enough, you will change your life. Maybe you're there now. And maybe this podcast will reach you. Who knows? But you can do any, they say you can do anything. You can. I was in an argument with a guy that I know, and he is quote unquote, he's a Christian, and he believes certain things very strongly. He believes that if you don't believe how he believes, and you don't have God in your life and all that stuff, that you're going to hell. No trouble, you're going to hell. That's it. And he believes that, and he believes that if you're married, your spouse is going to go to hell because, of course, they're not going to believe in God either. That's what this song that I listened to earlier today started reminding me of, all these different things in my childhood and stuff. And it's like everybody chooses to blame the devil for all the evil stuff and God for all the good stuff. And that's never made a lot of sense to me, because if God is all powerful, he's letting the evil stuff happen. So if you're not doing something about it, aren't you part of the problem? It's just a thought. And everybody comes at me with all this different stuff. I loved Charlie Kirk, because he was very much into his Christianity, very much into his religion and his faith. And that's the point. Faith, and I don't blame people for having faith. Faith is believing in something you can't see and you can't prove. When somebody says, well, faith, the Bible proves it. No, it doesn't. The Bible was written by man. It may have been written by ingenious men, but it was written by man. And it was written by a lot of men, actually. And so I was like, as I'm talking to this guy, he talks about, I told him the same thing I'm telling you, that you can do anything you want. And he goes, well, some people can't. And I said, who's that? And he goes, well, a single mother with 2 kids working 2 jobs just to support her and her kids. And I said, and he goes, well, she can't do anything. And I said, that's total bullshit. Because it is bullshit. Oh, no, it's not. Well, I tell you what, does she have a phone? Well, and I said, oh, so the phone has internet. And I said, does she smoke? Well, I said, I'll bet she smokes Marlboros. That's $10 a pack. And she's got a phone. And I'll bet she scrolls through that phone on Facebook or Twitter or whatever the hell she's doing. She scrolls through the phone. Now, what she could be doing, if she wanted to get herself out of the mess she's in, what she could be doing is bettering herself by going on, and it takes 3.2 milliseconds. You get onto your phone, you get onto Facebook and go personal development, or how do I get myself out of a hole, or whatever. Billions of videos will pop up that will help you and give you ideas and get your juices flowing, and etc. So you can change anytime you want. And that was the point to me. That was the point that I was trying to get across to him. And he was like, oh, you just don't get it. You don't know. I do. I was part of it. I was beat into a coma at 8 years old, folks. My mother didn't like to be alone. My mother, she was a sack. So she was. She mentally abused everybody. And she let her first husband physically abuse me and beat me to a coma at 8 years old. He would beat me so bad sometimes that I would be so black and blue that she wouldn't recognize me. And she let all of it happen. You're going to be alone. She needed a man. And now you got everybody doing, oh, we don't need men, but yet you've got everybody on the internet talking about, where are all the men gone? Well, fuck, you chased them off. Hello, this is not rocket science. I never went to middle school or high school. I got a job because I had to support my mother, her twins that she had, and half sisters, and my brother. And I had to support everybody. At one point in time, we were eating dog food to survive. My mother wasn't, because she was told by the doctor she needed good protein, so she was eating steak. But you had my mother, the twins, me and my brother, and whatever flavor of the month my mother had, living in a 2-bedroom old-time trailer, 1960s trailer. So the second bedroom was an itty-bitty thing. And it was a trash heap. We lived in shit and squalor. And I used to have to go to the grocery stores and steal food so me and my brothers and sisters could eat. And my brother and sisters. And I even went back later after I was trucking and stuff. I went back and I paid the prices. I think it was in the 90s that I went back. I actually got a a load through there. And so I stopped and I literally went to the two grocery stores that I used to do. One of them was out of business and gone. The other one was still there. I walked in, I said, "Who's the owner?" And they said, "So and so." And they brought the owner out. And I paid the owner $5,000 just in case for what I had taken. Because I didn't want to be that person that just forgot about the fact that if it weren't for the fact that I ripped them off, me and my brothers and sisters may not have survived it. But I didn't, they shouldn't have had to pay for that. And that's how I looked at it. I started realizing that I had to do what I had to do to better myself. Now, it's like losing my eyesight. When I lost my eyesight, accountability. When I lost my eyesight because I had a hole in my foot for 8 months after stepping on a carpet tack. And it took a big chunk out of the pad just underneath my pinky toe on my left foot. It took a big chunk, big hole. And for 8 months, I tried to, well, let's put it this way. We had lost our insurance because they came out with this awesome thing. And I don't want to get political here, but it was an awesome thing called the Affordable Care Act. And it would have cost just me, not including my wife, it would have cost me $1,600 a month for this insurance. Well, I didn't even make $1,600 a month. So the reality, because I had already got off the road at that point. And so the reality was, once my hole in my foot got infected, we scrounged up the money and took me to urgent care. Urgent care just looked at it, put a puppy pad underneath it because it was dripping infection. And they literally said, "Go to the emergency room. I can't do a thing for you." Went to the emergency room. Emergency room freaked out. And they took me in the back and they got me in this emergency room bed, and they checked my blood sugar, and my blood sugar was 1,200. And they freaked out again because, oh my God, this guy could stroke out. And so they brought my blood sugar down. In 12 hours, they brought it down to 135. Well, what most doctors don't know, unless you're a retinal specialist, you don't know this, that when you bring blood sugar down fast like that, it pops blood vessels in the weakest part of your body, your eyes. That's how I lost my sight. And people said, "You should sue the hospital." Hell, one of my sisters was a nurse. She goes, "Oh, you should sue the hospital. You'd make all kinds of money." And I thought to myself, what kind of asshole would I be if I sued these people for trying to save my life? Because they had two options. They had bring my blood sugar down, or I may stroke out. So they did the best thing they know how to do. They made a choice. But see, everybody goes, "Well, it was their fault." No, it's not their fault, because who ate all the cheeseburgers and pizzas on the road? Who was the one that got his diabetes so high? Well, and then people were like, "Well, you were off the road, so you weren't making the money anymore. And you were doing all this different stuff." And then at that point, we couldn't even afford Herbalife, so I wasn't on that anymore. And I started gaining my weight back. That's the whole point of what all this happened. Well, the whole point was that it was my fault, because if I hadn't ate like a starving man every day, because how that all started is another story. It's about me. I used to load 100-pound bags of feed onto trucks at a co-op for 12 hours a day. That was my job. I realized they paid you per bag. So I realized if I took 2 bags on my left shoulder and 2 bags on my right shoulder, and I ran up into the truck, that was getting paid 4 times. So that's what I did. And as I did that, I became this 22.5-inch bicep giant. I was a muscular, me and the same arm, and I did that because I had it so I could make the money, so I could, support the brothers and all that shit. Well, when I went I didn't stop eating that I was doing, because at that point I was eating a lot, eating carbs, etc., because of the fact that you have to do that to keep up the, your energy. So, but I went on the road and I wasn't doing shit for exercise, and I kept eating like that because that was the habit. And of course I got big, and I got up to like 270, 300 pounds. And then once I got off the road, I was still getting the exercise. Once I got off the road, then I just ballooned up. Well, So back to the hospital, this thing, and I ended up with, they thought I was going to lose my foot. And I ended up in the hospital for 9 days, had 2 surgeries on my foot. And actually, I love it. It's gross. Um, you know, so suing them didn't make any sense to me. So that's how my mind works. This person helped. Why the hell would I punish them for it? Okay, somebody else could sue Happy Thing and go, "Oh, I got millions and stuff." I mean, that's awesome. That's great. Moral compass, you go for it. Okay, but I don't like most people. Uh, but I digress. The whole point of this whole thing was this song took me back to all this stuff and took me back to how I went from here to here. And I saw a lot. In trucking, I was a big fish in a very big pond. Okay. I had companies wanted me to work for them. They sent me brochures and stuff because back then it kept on these drivers and who didn't have tickets and who did the rock and roll and blah blah blah. I mean, cash back then when I owned 1 point, I was making about $3 million a year, and I paid my drivers really well, a lot more than the company driver would get paid, because I expected them. They didn't call in, they didn't do anything, and if you did call in sick, unless you were dying and you were in the hospital, I would lay you off and hire somebody else, because I was paying you enough money to where I didn't put up with people being late and stuff, because my customers put up with me being late. So again, it all had to do with what did you do? I should have never been in trucking because of my past. But in trucking, I found a future. And then once I got taken off the road, again, because of my diabetes, because I was starting to get so outrageous that I was stories all there. But anyway, I had to get off the road. And I went into an office, and that's when I found out about office politics. That sucks. Sorry, couldn't put up with it, didn't put up with it. I had no filter either. I say, she walked in the door one day and I said, "Good morning, gorgeous." And she goes, "My name's not gorgeous." I said, "Good morning, beautiful." That's what I said. "Good morning, beautiful." She said, "My name's not but so-and-so." And I said, "Well, you got beautiful or bitch. You take your choice." Manager of the place just went, "Oh my God." And went, "Junior, what?" And it was like, I mean, I was on the road. I didn't have to have a filter. You know, if I thought you were full of shit, I told you were full of shit. It was a simple deal. I was very truthful. And still truthful. I've got somewhat of a filter now, but not as, I don't have a total filter. I still lose my shit and speak my mind. And, but I taught me, instead of vinegar, you check some more bees. Okay, I got that metaphor. So instead of asking somebody or telling somebody, for instance, like I've said, waiting for your ship to come in, get off your dead ass and swim out to it, I would tell people, okay, I would come at it a different way, and I'd go, "What do you want? What do you want out of life?" And they'd go, "What do you mean?" And I'd go, "Well, what do you? Simple deal. What do you don't understand what you're talking about?" I said, "Okay," and I would slow my voice down because it would start to annoy me. "What do you want?" And they still didn't say. I said, "It's a real simple question. Okay, now, where do you see yourself? What do you want?" And they'd go, "Well, I want to be a manager and this kind of thing." And I said, "Okay, cool." I said, "So what are you doing now that's getting you toward that goal?" And they go, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "That's a real simple question. What are you doing right now to get you in that ladder phase to where you want to be, to achieve your goal? Like if you're a basketball player and you're a kid and you want to go to the NBA, you practice, right? That's what you do. That's what you're doing to get to that goal." Okay. Me, trucking, I do my best because I wanted to be well known enough to be able to go on my own a crap ton of money. And I did that. I went toward that. That's what I did. Well, same thing. It's all about, what you're willing to do to go get it. And like I was telling this guy's arguing with this Christian, if you want. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't blame this guy for being a Christian. I know I've real super before, and they're not judgmental. You know, they sweeten won't come at you head on and don't get confrontational about it. And then you have people who think they're Christians, and they're the most judgmental people that have ever lived. And because I'm me, I laugh at stuff because it doesn't bother me. I look at where that person, whoever it is, male, female, dog, don't care. That person has a right to think and believe anything they want. They have that right. I have the right to think and believe anything I want. But if we're going to argue about something or have a conversation about something, I'm going to bring the facts to the matter. I'm going to bring the facts because I like knowing what I'm talking about. When this young girl that had 2 kids, a young mother, single mother, blah, 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 and she said, yes, she could. If she wanted it bad enough, coming back to it, she wanted it bad enough. Sorry about the rant. She wanted it bad enough. She could do anything she wants. She could get on YouTube. She could learn how to start bettering herself, learn skills she needed to better herself or get another job that would pay more or whatever. She wouldn't have to work the 2 jobs because she would be able to better herself. There are plenty of Enrique's, okay, Enrique Carrillo. There are plenty of people like that who have done exactly that. I pulled myself out of poverty, you know. Now, was that I made the money, I spent the money. It was a real simple deal. But it was like, what happens? You become a kid in a candy store when you have nothing, when you grow up with nothing. And I hadn't found Jim Rohn at that point to tell me, or Les Brown, or Robert Kiyosaki to tell me, save that money, invest that money, whatever. I had no clue what an investment was. I knew that, when I laid up, I could do anything I wanted to. If I wanted to, I could fly to Lake of the Woods, Canada, and fly in on a float plane where there's no roads anywhere and rent a cabin and go fishing for the weekend. I did crap like that. I had a ball. Back then when I was trucking, there was this little thing you could exploit, okay? There was a notch in the fence you could exploit. I saw a lot of concerts. Now, I don't like a lot of people, so I didn't want to be in the crowd. So what I would do is I would bobtail in or take an empty trailer and pull it in and back up to an empty dock or wherever, whoever was doing the show, Def Leppard, Garth Brooks, that when I was going to lay over for a night or whatever, I would just back in and they would assume I was with the band, and I'd walk up to the door and they'd give me the lanyard, and I had probably 300, 400 lanyards truck hanging on a barn. I've seen so many concerts, but I saw them backstage, and I got to party with these guys and eat backstage with them, guys, girls, whatever. It was awesome. I saw Yes probably 6 and on the same tour, I saw them 3 times because I was in those cities that they were in. Yes, 38 Special, Night Ranger. I saw all these guys, and they were immaculate shows. But I was backstage. I didn't have to hang around a lot of people. I had the lanyard. Nobody bothered, and I was kosher. I had a ball. But I never would have done that if I would have stayed where I was. I never would have been able to have those experiences, to be able to fish in every state, to be able to go to every Six Flags in America. I loved amusement parks. I was a big child. That's why I didn't have any kids. I was a big child. I don't think I would have been a father because I was too much of a child myself. And that's the thing. It's like you learn from well, that's what I did. I learned. Well, you know what? The whole point of this was to make you understand why this song hit like it did. And now I think what I'll do is to play the song for you, and maybe you'll get something out of it. Here we go.
Used to have a lot to say, but after a while you stop speaking when nobody hears you anyway. I used to tell my stories, used to share what was on my mind, used to believe that somebody would stop and take the time. But somewhere along the way, my words started falling through, like every piece of my heart was something nobody knew. I learned to keep my feelings locked behind my teeth. 'Cause explaining how I felt only left me feeling weak. So I started saying I'm alright when I wasn't even close. Started hiding all the things that hurt me the most.
What you want to do is save hundreds when Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance.
That's great, but can you ask?
Watch people talk over me like my voice didn't matter much. I watch them hear my words, but never really feel the touch of the pain behind the sentence, of the meaning in my, of the battles I was fighting that I kept trying to disguise. So I stopped bringing up the memories, stopped talking about the past, stopped asking for understanding when I knew it wouldn't last. Little by little, silence became the place I'd stay. Not because I had nothing to say, but because nobody stayed. 'Cause the loneliest kind of lonely is standing in a crowded room with a heart full of things to say and nobody making room. I became silent because nobody listened. Became distant because nobody stayed. I stopped reaching for people when my hands kept getting pushed away. I became silent because nobody stayed. Sometimes the loudest pain, the pain you learn to hide. I became silent, not because I didn't care, but because I did. Carried conversations that nobody carried back. Gave pieces of my soul away and never got them back. I was always there for others when they needed someone near. But when I needed somebody, there was nobody here. So I built myself a shelter out of walls and no regrets. Told myself I didn't need them, even though I still do, yeah. And the hardest thing about silence is how comfortable it becomes. You stop expecting anything, 'cause disappointment always comes. And someone finally asked me why I don't talk like before, why I keep everything inside me, don't open that door. I wanted to tell the truth, wanted to let the tears fall down, wanted to say I got tired of always feeling unheard around. But years of being quiet don't disappear overnight. A heart to hide needs time to feel alright. So I started with a whisper instead of keeping it within. Maybe healing starts slowly with letting someone in. 'Cause everyone wants to be known, every soul wants to be heard. And sometimes one person listening can change everything. The world, no, and speak again, learning that my voice still matters, even after all the pain. I became silent because nobody listened. That doesn't mean I disappeared. There's still a part of me waiting to finally be heard. I became silent but I'm finding my voice again. For every person who got quieter, because nobody cared to ask. For every heart that learned to hide behind a perfect mask. Your silence has a story. Your pain has a name. And just because they didn't hear you doesn't mean you weren't worth hearing. I became silent because no forevermore was the words I kept inside me. Still deserve an open door. I became silent because nobody listened. But I'm finally breaking through. And the first person I needed to hear me was me too. I became silent, but I was never invisible. Sometimes people don't go quiet because they have nothing to say. Sometimes they've just been unheard for too long. Wasn't always quiet. I used to have a lot to say. But after a while, you stop speaking. Nobody hears you anyway. I used to tell my stories, used to share what was on my mind. Do believe that some with a heart full of things to say, and nobody making room. I became silent because nobody listened. Became distant because nobody stayed. I stopped reaching for people when my hands kept getting pushed away. Became silent because no. Sometimes the loudest pain, the pain you learn to hide. I became silent. Not because I didn't care, but because I did. Carried conversations that nobody carried back. Gave pieces of my soul.
Well, there you go. That's somebody generated that with AI, and I'd thank him if I could. But I hoped that it would touch somebody else like it touched me. It's called I Became Silent Because Nobody Listened. You can find it on YouTube. Plenty of people that put it out there. But I hope that you understand that that's what this podcast is. It's me reaching back out. Guys, you can change your lives anytime you want. You just gotta want it bad enough. Get out of your comfort zone. There's nothing happens in your comfort zone worth a shit. Everything worth a shit is outside your comfort zone. It's scary, but do it. It's worth it. Thank you all for listening. I hope you choose to make this your best day ever. See you next time. Look, you're difficult.